What It Takes to Be a Maasai Warrior. Folktale Series, Part 1. Long ago, before the Maasai became known as the great protectors of the land, they lived a simple yet harmonious life on the endless plains of Africa. The land was a gift from Enkai, the god of the sky, who also blessed them with their sacred cattle. For the Maasai, cattle were more than a source of food. They were life itself. Their songs praised Enkai, their dances celebrated the rains, and their rituals honored the balance of nature. But one year the skies grew dark and heavy with storms. Day after day thunder rumbled, and rain fell in torrents, but the people's joy quickly turned to fear. With the storm came Olesere, a monstrous creature born of shadows and chaos. This beast, larger than any lion and fiercer than the hyena, began to attack the Maasai's cattle. Each night the villagers heard the terrifying roar of Olesere as it prowled the land. By dawn they would find empty kraals, their cattle stolen, and deep claw marks left as a warning. The elders gathered, their faces grim. "Enkai is testing us," one said, "but how can we face such a creature alone?" Another replied, "We must ask for guidance. Let us call upon Enkai to save us." And so the entire village gathered under the sacred acacia tree. The elders led a prayer, their voices rising in unison as they chanted to the god of the sky. They called out, "Enkai, protector of your people, show us the way. Who among us can save the Maasai?" That night, as the village slept, Enkai answered their prayer, but not in the way they expected. A young boy named Olesere was visited in his dreams. Olesere was small for his age, not yet old enough to join the herders or strong enough to carry a warrior's spear, but he was known for his cleverness and his kind heart. In his dream, Olesere saw a figure cloaked in light. The figure spoke in a voice that seemed to echo like thunder, yet it was calm and steady. "Olesere, I have chosen you," the voice said. "You will be the one to protect your people. But before you can face Olesere, you must prove your courage and your wisdom. You will embark on a journey, and the land itself will test you. Only then will you be ready." When Olesere woke the next morning, he told the elders about his dream. At first they laughed. "How can a boy like you face a beast as powerful as Olesere?" One elder scoffed, but Olesere stood firm. "Enkai believes in me," he said, "and I will not let my fear stop me." With the village's reluctant blessing, Olesere set off on his journey. He carried a simple wooden spear, a small pouch of dried meat, and his unwavering faith in Enkai. The first trial. Crossing the great river, 5 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Olesere's first challenge came quickly. After walking for days, he reached the great river. The water raged violently, swollen from the recent storms. The current was so strong that even the trees along the bank seemed to bow in submission. Olesere sat by the river, feeling the weight of doubt creeping into his mind. How could he, a mere boy, cross such a dangerous river? But as he watched, he noticed a group of birds flying low over the water. They flapped their wings furiously but stayed close to the surface, avoiding the stronger winds above. Inspired, Olesere searched for a part of the river where the current seemed calmer, just as the birds had taught him. He found a narrow crossing and used a fallen tree as a bridge, carefully balancing as the water roared beneath him. Step by step, he made it to the other side, soaking wet but triumphant. The second trial, the Forest of Shadows, 12 o'clock, 20 o'clock. On the other side of the river lay a dense forest. The villagers called it the Forest of Shadows, a place where few dared to go. The trees were so tall and thick that they blocked out the sunlight, casting the ground in eerie darkness. Strange sounds filled the air. Rustling leaves, distant growls, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Olesere entered the forest, gripping his spear tightly. Every step felt like a test of his resolve. At one point he heard the low growl of a lion. His heart raced as he spotted the predator's glowing eyes in the darkness. Olesere didn't have the strength to fight the lion, but he remembered his father's advice. Every creature has its weakness. You just need to find it. Looking around, Olesere spotted a hollow log nearby. He quickly grabbed a branch and struck the log, creating a loud, echoing sound. The noise startled the lion, which backed away and disappeared into the shadows. Olesere took a deep breath, realizing that courage wasn't just about fighting. It was about using wisdom and staying calm in the face of danger. The final trial, facing Olesere, 20 o'clock, 29:00. After days of trials, Olesere finally returned to his village, but he found it in chaos. Olarinkoi had grown bolder, attacking not only the cattle but also the villagers themselves. Olesere saw fear in the eyes of his people, but he also saw hope when they looked at him. The beast was waiting at the edge of the village, its massive form silhouetted against the setting sun. Olesere gripped his spear and approached. The ground shook as Olarinkoi roared, charging toward him. Olesere stood his ground, remembering everything he had learned on his journey. As the beast lunged, Olesere dodged to the side, striking its leg with his spear. Olarinkoi roared in pain but turned quickly, swiping at Olesere with its massive claws. The boy used his agility to stay ahead, waiting for the right moment. Finally, when the beast lunged again, Olesere thrust his spear with all his strength, piercing Olarinkoi's heart. The creature let out one final roar before collapsing. The celebration, 29:00:30:00. The villagers rushed out of their homes, cheering as Olesere stood victorious. The elders declared him the first Maasai Warrior, and the people sang songs of his bravery. Olesere, though tired, smiled humbly. He knew this was just the beginning. The trials he faced would now become the foundation of what it meant to be a Maasai warrior, a protector, a leader, and a beacon of hope. And so the legend of Olesere was born, passed down through generations to remind the Maasai that courage and wisdom are the true marks of a warrior. The gathering of the young braves, 2:00, 10:00. With Olarinkoi defeated, peace returned to the Maasai village. But the elders, inspired by Olesere's journey, decided to establish a tradition to ensure their people would always be protected. They called for all young men in the village to gather under the sacred acacia tree. Here they would train to become warriors, following the example of Olesere. Olesere, though still young himself, was chosen to guide them. He stood before a group of boys, their faces a mix of excitement and nervousness. Among them was Lekuta, a tall boy with fiery ambition, and Nabuisho, who was smaller and quiet but had a sharp gaze that missed nothing. Olesere began, "A warrior is not made by strength alone. It is the heart and mind that define us. Today we begin your journey." The first lesson was endurance. Olesere led the boys on a trek across the savannah, teaching them to read the land, how to find water in dry seasons, how to track prey, and how to sense danger in the whispers of the wind. As they walked, he shared wisdom he had learned during his trials. "Remember," Olesere said, "the river taught me patience, the forest taught me to listen, and the beast taught me courage. These lessons are everywhere if you are willing to learn." The challenge of the plains, 10:00, 20:00. One day, Olesere set up a test for the young braves. He led them to a part of the plains where wildebeest herds grazed. "Your task," he said, "is to bring back the horn of a wildebeest, but you must do it without causing harm. This is not a test of force, but of cleverness." The boys split into groups, each trying a different approach. Lekuta charged in with brute strength, startling the herd and causing chaos. He returned empty-handed, frustrated. Nabuisho, however, observed from a distance. He noticed an older wildebeest lying apart from the herd. Moving carefully, he approached and found that it had shed one of its horns naturally. He brought it back to Olesere, who smiled. "A true warrior knows that victory is not always won with the spear," Olesere said, holding up the horn. "It is won with wisdom and understanding." A new threat, 20:00, 28:00. As the boys continued their training, a new danger arose. Raiders from a distant land, drawn by the Maasai's growing reputation and wealth, began to attack nearby villages. These raiders were fierce and cunning, using weapons the Maasai had never seen before. The elders gathered once again, their faces heavy with concern. "Olesere," they said, "you are our protector. But this time the threat is not one beast. It is many men." Olesere knew this would be a greater challenge than Olarinkoi. He turned to the young braves and said, "Your training was not just for the trials. It was to prepare you to stand together as warriors. Now we must defend our people." Olesere devised a plan. He led the boys to a high ridge overlooking the village. Using the terrain to their advantage, they created traps and signals to outsmart the raiders. When the raiders arrived, the young warriors worked as one, driving them away without losing a single life. The Warrior's Oath, 28:00:30:00. After the raiders were defeated, the village held a great ceremony. Under the light of the full moon, the young braves stood before the elders, each of them having proven their courage, wisdom, and unity. Olesere spoke, his voice steady and strong. "You have faced fear and overcome it. You have learned that a warrior's strength comes not from the spear, but from the bond we share with each other and the land. Tonight you take the oath of the warrior. The boys knelt as the elders placed beads around their necks, marking them as protectors of the Maasai. The people sang and danced late into the night, celebrating not just the bravery of their warriors, but the unity of their community. As the firelight flickered, Olesere stood quietly, watching the stars. He knew that his journey was far from over. The trials he faced were now a part of the Maasai legacy, a story that would continue to inspire generations to come. Outro 30:00. And so the Maasai people began a new chapter, one where the tradition of the warrior was not just a role but a way of life. Olesere's story lived on, reminding them that strength lies not in the individual, but in the unity and wisdom of the community. In the next part of our story, we will see how Olesere's lessons are tested once again as the Maasai face new challenges. Until then, remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to rise above it.